evening, Toastmaster members. We have no guest tonight. I have my leadership style, not communication style tonight. I have learned leadership skills and roles for so many years. I have learned them, developed them, improved them, and gained confidence of my leadership style. My leadership style is liking, being personal and likable. Tonight, I'd like to share my experience as a leader so you will understand what my leadership style is. Chapter 1 of my life. I was elected class president when I was in the 2nd grade. Since then, almost every school year, I was a class president or leader. When I was in the 6th grade, I became the first female student president with 100 years of history in my school. Wow, I was very proud of it, proud of myself. I was a smart kid and the captain of the basketball team. I was and am hot. I learned 3 requirements for a leader: confidence, toughness, and assertiveness. Generally speaking, people in Japan are quiet and obey the social rules, unlike Americans. These 3 techniques worked well. However, the message in the yearbook from my teacher stuck in my mind. He said, "Carrie, you are the one walking in the middle of the street, but please pay attention to small plants, flowers, and weeds growing at the edge of a street." Chapter 2. Since I came to the US, people that I have worked for and with are Americans. They are expressive and insist their own rules. When I taught some classes in university, I said, read chapter 1, 2, and 3 by next week. Some students said, yeah. Okay. What about chapter 1 and 2 only? Other students said, yeah. I wonder how I could make everyone happy to or willing to say yes to me. The 3 requirements for a leader were not enough. I needed to improve my leadership style. Chapter 3. Who says is a matter more than what is said. We are always more likely to say yes to those we know, and more likely to be willing to say yes to those we like. For example, if Diego and Cheyenne asked me for help, I would be happy to say yes and help them because I like them. I like you. But if my ex-boyfriend called me and asked me, "Hey, Carrie, never hang up." When I understood this logic, I thought, this is it. This is how I should improve my leadership style. Luckily, I know how to get people like me because I am an attention seeker and I love getting attention. Go see people, reveal myself, talk to them, listen to them very well, and show how much I enjoy being around them. Guarantee they would like me. To apply these techniques to leadership, I need to move from the front of the people of the group of people to the back, or from the center to the periphery, so I can talk with all of the group members. Literally, every one of them, including small plants, flowers, and weeds growing at the edge of the street. This is my leadership style. Although I'm still learning, developing, and improving leadership skills and roles, I have confidence of my leadership style. Liking and being personal and likable, or even lovable. Back to Toastmaster.
So an adjective? It's an adjective, like to describe something?
Like those meddling kids. Okay. This is TT, meddling. Okay. I'm not sure. I got to double check the path. I think it is
evaluation feedback.
Yeah, it's the innovative planning and it's evaluation and feedback.
Over here, you can see.
Thank you. Thank you. So I gave this speech previously, and this is my evaluation and feedback speech. So I'm giving it again based on the evaluation feedback that I received. Yeah, I was starting. So normally I would also have a PowerPoint, but due to the situation, I don't have the PowerPoint with me. But just know that under normal circumstances, there'd be a PowerPoint. So greetings, fellow Toastmasters and honored guests. Thank you for joining me this evening. I will be speaking about airbrushing and how to airbrush and how someone can get into using the airbrush and how a tool like that may be useful for many people. So the first thing I want to get into is if you're going to learn how to airbrush, the best way to learn is to know how it works. So I have an example here. Essentially, air, and as within the name. Yep, if I can get this cap off. So essentially, air is fed through the bottom, and then paint is fed through the top, and the two meet each other in the middle, and they are able to atomize the paint particles so that you can spray an even coat of paint on what the object is you're painting. Why do you need to know how it works? Well, it's useful to when you're troubleshooting, when you're trying to figure out what's going on or what's wrong, when you need to know how to clean it, when you're using it. Knowing these things can make you better at airbrushing. So the important thing to know is that depending on the paint viscosity and the air pressure and distance to the object will help you control how to get a good finish. with a gravity-fed dual-action airbrush like this, you can control both air pressure and the amount of paint sprayed. For those of you who don't know the difference between airbrushes, this is where I would normally show my PowerPoint. There's what's known as a gravity-feed dual-action airbrush, and there's what's known as a siphon-fed single-action airbrush. Essentially, a siphon-fed single-action airbrush has the paint cup on the bottom of the airbrush, and it's fed in through a siphon, and you essentially press one button for it to spray out. It's very similar to a spray can. You just hold it down, and then the air shoots it out with pretty much the same steady amount. Whereas with a dual action airbrush, you loaded the paint in through the top. By pressing down, you release air, and by pulling back, you control the amount of paint coming out. So this is more helpful because if you're further away, you can release more paint. If you're closer, you can release less paint. And this gives you more control for small details like shading, shadows, people who like to paint metallic surfaces or non-metallic metals. They're able to get the highlights and shadows that they need using the tool like this. So with different airbrushes, you have different needle and nozzle sizes. They typically range from 0.1 to 0.5. 0.5 is good if you use acrylic paint or thicker paint, and 0.1 is good if you want to use something that is like thinner paint and you want to get smaller, tinier details. So when you're airbrushing, it's important to know what type of paint you're using. There are three basic types of paint. There are acrylics, lacquers, and enamels. Acrylics tend to be they're usually water-based. They have less fumes. They're easier to work with. However, they tend to be a lot thicker. So when using thicker paints like this, you would want a larger needle nozzle size, probably the 0.5, and you'd have to turn the air pressure up to around I want to say like 30% or so that you can actually spray it through, whereas like lower pressures, it might start to dry on the needle and get stuck. Use lower pressures when you want to use lacquers, which are usually, they're tougher than acrylics are. However, there's more fumes and you need equipment to protect yourself while you're using them. But because they are they're typically like a thinner paint, you spray them at like a lower pressure and still get a pretty good finish. Let's see. And finally, enamels are very similar to lacquers. However, it's a slower drying time. And that may be useful to you depending on what sort of effects you're going for. It's important to remember to use the right thinner for the right paint. Don't mix the lacquer thinner with water based paint. Don't mix the acrylics with the lacquers, because oftentimes these other paint thinners will destroy whatever paint it is you're using if you're using it with the wrong type of paint. One issue that a lot of people have, we've taught a couple classes, is people tend to use a brand of paint called Tamiya, which is technically acrylic, but it's alcohol based. So when people try to thin it with water, the water actually breaks it down, and so it doesn't stick to the surface. It's one of those weird things that you don't really know until you've messed around with it, but it's important to use the right thinner for the right paint. So it's important to have mixing tools when you're mixing your paint, but probably the next most important thing that comes with using an airbrush is getting a good air compressor. You want to make sure you have one with a tank so that it's not constantly running. And then you want to make sure that you have one that you can adjust the air pressure with so that you can control and use different types of paints. So finally, last but not least, you want to use down here in the South, you want to use a moisture trap when you're airbrushing, because with the humidity, water is going to start building up inside the hose, and it's going to come out into your paint job. So I usually use 2 moisture traps because it's so humid here. By using a moisture trap, you can then stop the paint from coming out. In conclusion, although it may seem like a scary tool to use, once you know where to start and what you need and the essentials, it can actually be a pretty useful tool that can be used from anything from like what I like, model making, to fine art, to crafting, to whatever you may need it for. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Again, I'm David, and I'm going to be doing the table topics as Diego just mentioned. And I'm using, again, this cube that has a list of cards in it. It's called Storywise, and it's from an assisted living facility called Atria. They developed this to help older people find interest in life, topics to talk about, and to keep them stimulated. But it's really, we were just blown away when they gave us a copy of it, because it has lots of, it's great for parties and just to get people talking. And so I've just selected a few cards from this, and I'm going to ask for a volunteer, and I'll read the first question, and we'll see what we get. So does anybody would like to start? Okay, we're going with Diego. Okay, here's the first question. If you could, which day would you choose to live over again? And why would you want to do that? Thank you, Diego. took a minute to come up with that, but I thought that was very well said. And I agree that being out in nature can be just an incredible experience, a spiritual, if you will. So I'm totally on board with you there. So do we have another volunteer? I think,
Maurice was
okay.
first.
Okay, do you want to go, Maurice?
Go ahead, Maurice.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, and then Cheyenne could be next. So the next question is, do you believe that morality is innate, something that's just built into us, or learned?
Glad you got that question.
It's a heavy question.
You got 2 hours.
Okay. Well, it depends on what standpoint. There's different perspectives on it. From a religious standpoint, we're all sinners and shaped in iniquity. But on the flip side of that, God put the law in our hearts and our minds. So that's a kind of like a two-edged sword there. But for the most part, well, it's both learned and innate in several ways. It's both. Because when you grow up as a baby, when a baby cries, they want something fulfilled. And until they get that thing fulfilled, they'll cry or do whatever until what they want is fulfilled. And then as you grow up, they'll get into anything, if their parents don't guide them or check them. So it's both. There's some aspects that are learned and there's some aspects that are innate. Mr. Topic Master.
It's good.
Thank you, Maurice. I can definitely see it being both as well, and I thought that was well said. So I think Cheyenne will be next, and this one's maybe a little deep too. I have to come up with some different ones next time. What do you think, whether living forever would be a blessing or a curse?
Ooh.
Hello, good evening, fellow Toastmasters. I have been asked whether I think that living forever would be a blessing or a curse, and I am going to answer this as vaguely as possible and say that it would depend on the person. If you are an unhappy person, then that would be your worst nightmare. But if you are someone who, like myself, I don't know if I want to live forever, but maybe live a little bit longer so you get to travel to all the places you want to go to, you can do all the things that you want to do. I would like to be able to do that without having to work. I wouldn't want to have to work for 900 years. But as I stated before, I think that the ability to live forever would be a blessing or a curse depending on who you're asking. So that is my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Depends on the person, yes. I think if we can find happiness, there's reason to keep going for sure. I saw an episode of The Twilight Zone the other day, the original Twilight Zone, where a man had made a deal with the devil where he would live forever. And then he ended up being convicted of a crime and sentenced to life in prison.
Oh, no.
So it was kind of ironic. He wasn't happy.
Yeah.
So do we have time for another?
Well, it's 23 after.
Okay. Mhm. There you go.
Thank you, Diego. Fellow Toastmasters, I am here to evaluate the meeting for tonight. I really think it went smoothly considering the format we're in. I really like this. I think it's really not that big of an adjustment. We had the roles defined pretty quickly, with the exception of a few minor roles that kind of got lost in the shuffle, but we caught them later. We did get, I think we started a little late, but that's kind of to be expected with everything and just kind of what's going on. The theme of the meeting was not explained, or was there a theme of the meeting? I don't know.
I don't think there was a theme.
Oh, okay, then we're good. But what the word of the day was mettle, and our team was showing great mettle in this meeting. And all the roles were introduced. Also, for the two speeches, we had filled our roles, so that's really good. And you know, we should be able to, in the future, be able to fill roles, I hope, for the next meeting. But I really think this is a good start for the online format. And the timer, the colors, I think that works. Maybe just holding the colors up a little longer. So it's almost like we could mimic the traffic light thing. I don't know, just kind of thinking out loud. And so with that, I will go ahead and ask that Cheyenne evaluate the first speech.
Second speech. I evaluated.
Oh, okay. Kyler is going to evaluate the first speech.
David.
I evaluated Kyler's speech.
David evaluated
Okay.
Kyler's speech, right?
Yes.
Okay. So on the first, okay, David, I'm going to go ahead and introduce David, who's going to evaluate the first speech. Go ahead, David.
Hi. Yeah, we switched roles, so that was why it was some confusion. So I evaluated Carrie's speech on her leadership style, my leadership style. I think Carrie continues to improve, and I actually listened to her rehearse the speech a few times, so it's almost hard to evaluate it because now I'm hearing it for real. But it's, I'll just go ahead and start with the different things. As far as clarity goes, I think her clarity is good. I could understand what she was saying. English is her second language, but she does very well with that. And that was not an issue. Vocal variety is something I think we could all work on. And her vocals were good and at a good volume, but I think a little more softer tones at times might help emphasize the more important moments. Eye contact, it's kind of hard to judge eye contact if we're just looking at a camera, but she did play up to I could see that she was using that. She was aware of where her body was and trying to, it's really unique evaluating someone online when I'm watching them in person. So it's a little bit challenging, but I think it went very well. But the eye contact, I think playing, using the camera and looking at y'all, she did good with that. Gestures, Carrie's been doing very well with gestures. She practices beforehand and knows what she wants to say and just uses her hands in such a way that to emphasize what the subject is. As far as audience awareness, I think she was aware of y'all. She was looking at the different little windows of everybody. She was comfortable, and I think the topic was interesting because it's personal to her leadership style. She talked about what she did that was personal to her life and her life experience. As far as the general comments, I thought she excelled at using gestures and adapting to the online format. And especially along with using gestures, she had a certain emotional built into it. I felt a connection with what she was trying to get across. As far as what to work on, you may want to work on, while the volume was good and consistently high, try addressing something, with more soft talk at times to have more vocal variety. And I would say to challenge yourself, perhaps not to over prepare. I mean, it's good to be very prepared, but it's also good to sometimes just have some spontaneity, let things come out, kind of like the table topics format. It's a difficult thing to master, but I think you're making very good progress, and keep at it. So, Mr. General Evaluator.
Thank you, David. Okay, with our second evaluation, I'll release the lectern to Cheyenne, who will be reviewing Kyler's speech.
Good evening, everyone. I am reviewing Kyler's speech titled Airbrushing and Techniques. I think that next time we do speeches, we will do what Carrie did and stand up. I like that. That will make it feel more natural like we do in the meetings. So I think if we had had him stand up, we'll prepare that space next time. It would have flowed a little smoother. Eye contact. You had it easy. You were looking at all the squares, I hope. So I did say a great thing about your speech was you are very knowledgeable about the subject. Mm-hmm. And so it shows when you're talking about it how much you like it. And you were barely using any notes. I think you were just keep using them as placeholders to what to talk about next. You weren't really using them as notes as far as everything to say. So I think that's awesome that you have something that you're so knowledgeable about that you can talk about it without even using notes. Some things to work on: vocal variety. You kind of used the same vocal tone the whole time. You didn't waver like excitement or one thing you did last time that you did not do this time. I think this speech works really well when you're doing a panel of fellow painters, but for us, not having any knowledge or experience painting, I think it would have been good to use some examples of what airbrushing is used for. Some movie props. Last time you mentioned the spray paint makeup, so you kind of related it to people who don't know what you're talking about. Because when you're talking about air pressure, thickness of paint, lacquer, like if we don't paint models, we're not really sure what that applies for. Maybe just give an example of what, because it doesn't really, we don't know. But when you're doing it for your panel, they'll know exactly what you're talking about. But if you're giving it to speech to people who don't know, that could help. Another thing that could help is after you were done explaining the part of what the airbrush did, you could set it down so you can use your hands for gestures. You kind of held it the whole time, so your hands were just right here. There was one time where you did like this to the side, but I think putting that down after you're done, or setting it, if we were in our normal meeting and you set it down on the podium so we could still look at it, but it's not keeping your hands here, I think that would have helped a lot. And would have helped with you increasing your audience engagement and being able to, use your hands for that benefit. So that concludes my evaluation of airbrushing and techniques.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheyenne. Okay, do I turn the lectern over to Diego again, or do I keep going?
You keep going.
Okay.
The other evaluations.
I'm sorry, it's been a little while. All right, so Cheyenne, I'm just going to go back to you with the, if you can give us the timer's report for tonight.
Sure. So with our speeches, Carrie, your speech was 5 minutes and 50 seconds. Kyler, your speech was 7 minutes and 0 seconds. Table topics, Diego, you had 2 minutes and 7 seconds. Maurice, you were 1 minute and 19 seconds. And mine was at 54 seconds. David, your evaluation was at 3 minutes and 3 seconds. And mine was at 2 minutes and 57 seconds. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Maurice, wait, who's on?
Yes, yeah, I'll do it. All counter. I'm all
Okay.
counter. I'll do that. Yes, even though I did not have the mettle to stay on point and paying attention to all the uhs, I do have an all counters report. I do have Diego. Well, I just have an myself. I'll write that down. Diego had an as the Toastmaster. I didn't really pay strict attention to Carrie's speech as far as us, because I was listening to the speech. But I don't remember hearing ahs or ums or anything like that. And then Kyler had a number of us, and Cheyenne had a few during her evaluation of Kyler, and Sean had a couple as general evaluator. And I don't remember hearing that. That's it. That's it for the all counts report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Maurice. Who has got the grammarian role tonight? Okay, Diego, go ahead with the grammarian report. Thank you, Diego. All right, well, with that, I kind of jumped the gun and did the general evaluation early, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it back over to our Toastmaster, Diego.
Or maybe I could give back to Cheyenne.
I could. Sounds good to me.
Okay, I'll note that. And Kyler, so the title of your speech is basically airbrushing. Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Making sure airbrushing.
Okay. Let's see. Yes, I could. Yes, I could be his evaluator. Yes. Okay.
Not yet. Okay, I can probably general evaluator is a good starting point before Toastmaster.
Yes. Yes.
Did anyone take all counter yet? I'll take all. Yeah, I'll take all counter.
I can-
Oh, you.
Me.
I can be timer.
He does. I
I'll-
have too much construction paper for someone who's almost 30. Like I have a lot.
I'll have it worked out. Yeah, I'll have a green, yellow, and red system.
Don't put that in front of me. Dollar Tree has it. Or you could color it.
I think I have a green, yellow, and red T-shirt. I can use.
That works. You gotta go down below the camera, change shirts, and come back
Yeah,
up.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Or you could use like vegetables like zucchini,
yeah,
squash, tomato. I don't know. We can get creative. This is fun.
cool.
Okay, just a quick question. Do we want to record these or not? I mean, I mean, you can do it or not. It doesn't matter. Okay.
Great.
All righty. Okay, all right. Okay, and then the roles one more time. I'm evaluating someone's speech. Sean, you want to be Toastmaster? Is that what you for next week? Is that okay?
Yes.
And then David, timer, and Kyler, did you mention something?
All counter.
All counter. Okay, all counter. And then anyone else? Who's the
I'm a general evaluator.
okay, all right. Carrie's general evaluator. Okay.
I guess yes.
No, not prepared. Okay. Anyone else take any roles? I got Kyler, David, Sean, myself, and Carrie. Anyone else take roles for next week?
Speech.
Okay. Okay, Cheyenne. Okay. All right. So Cheyenne has a speech. Okay. And okay, Diego's evaluate. Okay, that is it. Okay, now do we want to I guess before you close it out, do you want to have me talk to Cheyenne or do it on the phone or something about the payment?